Well, hello and welcome to our Northeast SARE webinar. Today we will be hearing about the Partnership Grant Program from Grant Coordinator Candice Huber and Partnership Grant recipient Sam Anderson of Cornell Cooperative Extension. My name is Deb Haliba and I work at Northeast SARE as our communications specialist. As you may know, Northeast SARE offers a suite of competitive grant programs to advance sustainable agriculture throughout the 12 Northeast states and District of Columbia. At the center of all of our grant programs are farmers who engage as researchers, students, teachers, teammates, and collaborators, as in our Partnership Grant Program. Before I turn the mic over to Candice, I wanted to go over some quick housekeeping details. Today's webinar is scheduled for 60 minutes and we do have a lot of ground to cover, but we will aim to end at 1 p.m. We are recording today's webinar and you'll be able to find the recording on our website and on our YouTube channel within the coming week. With thanks to the University of Vermont's American Sign Language Interpreter Services, today we are pleased to offer live captioning for this webinar. And to follow along, you'll just use the stream text link that you see on this slide, and I will also drop that link into the chat. We have organized several breaks during the presentation to take your questions, so feel free to type them in at any time into the question box. And I will be helping Candice and Sam manage your questions and will otherwise be in the background if you need me. And with that, I'll turn things over to Candice.
Terrific. Thanks, Deb. Welcome, everyone. I'm Candice Huber, and I'm the coordinator for the Partnership Grant and the Farmer Grant programs for Northeast SARE out of the University of Vermont. The call is now open for partnership grants, so I'm going to give you some information about that program, who is eligible, and how to apply. Throughout the presentation, I'll be addressing the questions that came in with registrations, but I did see a question about incoming PhD students. At this time, our graduate student grant program is also open, but that's a separate program and we will not be discussing that today. So you can find out more about that program on our website. Also with us today is Sam Anderson from Cornell Cooperative Extension in New York. He received a 2019 partnership grant and also worked on a couple of other partnership grants. And he will be sharing his experience with us just a little later. So SARE stands for Sustainable Agriculture Research and Education, and it's a federally funded program through the USDA National Institute of Food and Agriculture. There are 4 regions, and the Northeast region is hosted at the University of Vermont. We serve the 12 states, as Deb said, and the District of Columbia from West Virginia all the way up to Maine. So the first criteria for our program is that your project has to take place in our region, so in one of these states. The Partnership Grant Program is one of 6 competitive grant programs that we have. And last year for partnership grants, we had 42 proposals submitted and 26 of those were funded, which is a success rate of 62%. And that's pretty typical for a success rate. We usually fund about 50 to 60% of the proposals for this program. I'll be going into a lot more detail on all of this in the next hour, but in a nutshell, here are the basics of the program. To be eligible to apply, your occupation has to be something where you work with farmers in the Northeast region, and you have to partner with at least one commercial farmer for the project. Your project must address an opportunity to improve the sustainability of farms. The maximum amount you can request is $30,000 and funds are paid to you as reimbursements. So you need to have the capacity to make any purchases up front. The length of the project can run anywhere from 1 to 3 years, but no earlier than the start date of August 1st. And you can only submit 1 application per program per year. So if you have a couple of ideas, choose just the best one. The proposal deadline is April 13th at 5 p.m. So you want to be sure that you'll be able to have all your materials prepared to make that deadline. What we will cover today is who can apply and on what topics, what makes a good proposal, so what reviewers look for, and how to submit your proposal online. Anyone who works with farmers can apply. You can be with a nonprofit organization, an academic or outreach organization. You can be a for-profit business. We get a lot of veterinarians applying. You can be a municipality, county conservation districts commonly apply. You can be with the State Department of Agriculture, and even federal employees can apply, although they often can't get paid for their time on the project since it's federal funding. Now, if you are a farmer who also does consulting for other farms on the side, you would be eligible to apply as long as you have another farm that you're partnering with. But if you are a farmer and looking to apply for a project on your own, you would not be eligible for this program, and you could wait for our farmer grant program that is offered in the fall and apply then. So as I said earlier, there is only one application per person allowed per year. But if your organization has more than one employee, then each of them are welcome to submit proposals. So the basis of SARE projects is how can we make farming more sustainable? So project topics should address at least one of these aspects of sustainability. You need to benefit the environment, how to reduce pollution, the profitability of farms, conservation, how to improve the stewardship of the land, farm labor in order to sustain operations, and enhancing the quality of life for farmers, their employees, and the people around them. All of these will benefit farmers long term, and your project needs to address just at least one of them. We fund a wide range of topics. Some examples from the last couple of years are aquaculture, beekeeping or pollination, any sort of crop or livestock production, such as variety trials, cultivation methods, soil health, including composting. We had a question about composting was an eligible topic, nutrient management or pest and disease control. And you can work with certain commodities, but your project doesn't have to be commodity specific. Business management may not apply to a specific commodity. For example, Juliet Glass of the Maryland Farmers Market Association had a project marketing for farmers in the digital age, and she produced a guide to social media for farmers. Education projects are also eligible as long as you develop some new educational resource or adapt existing resources to apply them to a new audience of farmers. And you can also develop a product or test a product. For example, we had a project looking at an electric walking tractor, like in the photo here, called the Weed Weasel. Now, just a note on that, especially for product development, the results of your project available to the public. And this is important to know because if you are developing a prototype using SARE funds, you will be required to share the design. However, if you're testing an existing product or design, then you're not required to share the design or the ingredients. You just need to share the results of your testing. So basically, just remember that any work that SARE is funding will be made available to the public. And if you would like more examples of what we fund, you can go to our projects database at projects.sare.org and search for projects in our region. Now, for partnership grants, you are required to partner with a farmer who will contribute to both the planning and implementation of the project. The farm must be a commercial operation with an established farm income of at least $1,000. This is the USDA definition of a farm. A commercial farmer is eligible to be a partner farm, but maybe a farm enterprise where the primary mission is education and not selling their produce would not be eligible. Many institutions have research farms that are not commercial farms, and so these would not qualify as a partner farm. However, you can duplicate the research on the research farm as part of your project to be able to collect more data and enhance the results. We have a document on our website that explains more about what qualifies as a farm, and you can always contact me if you have any questions on that. Ideally, the farmer would have experience in the topic area, but if not, it's a good idea to get another collaborator on board who could provide that experience. And as I mentioned before, the farm needs to be located in the Northeast. Now, the farmer will need to provide a letter of commitment, so be sure to allow time to collect that as they can get super busy in the spring. And this is a required document and must be submitted by the deadline. So now I will have Sam take over and talk about his experience applying for and managing partnership grant. Sam, take it away.
Okay, thank you, Candice. Can everyone still hear me okay? Good, okay.
Yes.
So my name is Sam Anderson. I'm an urban agriculture specialist with Cornell Cooperative Extension based in New York City. I'll talk more about that really briefly. Just a very quick background, just to say that before working for Cornell in the city, sorry, next slide, please.
Sorry.
Yep. I had past experience at nonprofits and including getting a partnership grant in 2014 as well. And so I might mention that a little bit, but I'll mostly talk about the one that I'm working on right now. Next slide, please. Sorry, can we go back one? There we are. Sorry, I have the same problem when I'm doing it myself. One forward, please. There we are. So just to let you know sort of who we are as applicants, or who I am as an applicant. So Cornell Cooperative Extension's Urban Agriculture Program is, well, sort of not a formal entity exactly, but the two of us, my colleague Yolanda and myself, work in all 5 boroughs of New York City, and we basically provide extension type of assistance, so technical assistance, workshops and education, and a lot of very miscellaneous behind the scenes ways of helping people. And we provide that to urban farmers, and there are more than 30 urban farms across the city. And we do focus, we actually, our sort of definition of commercial urban ag, which is what our job is designed to work with commercial urban ag. We actually set it as $1,000 or more of income. We aren't checking people's taxes or anything, but that's sort of loosely what we're aiming for. So that corresponds with eligibility for their partnership grant. Next slide, please. So the one that this grant that I most recently applied for is about two-spotted Spider-Mite, which is a frequent pest. It's usually a greenhouse pest, but on urban farms in New York City, we find that it's a pretty serious pest of tomatoes and cucumbers and some other plants outdoors, which is unlike agriculture in most of the Northeast, which is where I had been working previously, and was not used to the idea of this as an outdoor pest, and neither were most of the farmers. So most people didn't even realize they had it. And so quickly, realizing that it was a pretty serious problem across the city, I had some questions, and so well, the first thing is that this seemed like a topic worth addressing and maybe diving more deeply into, because we didn't have good solutions. We didn't have good answers. Next slide, please. So the biggest questions being, why is it so damaging on urban farms and not so damaging outside the city? Is it because of the different climate in the city, the urban heat island effect, which means nighttime temperatures are 5 to 7 degrees Fahrenheit warmer. Like the nighttime lows are warmer in the city than they are outside the city, and that's a whole topic of its own. But it means that we have some pests that aren't supposed to overwinter here that do. It also, sorry, can we go forward one more? There we are. And we also have, it might be because of a lack of natural enemies, which keep spider mites in check in a lot of other places. So these are all just questions, and I talked to colleagues about it, and nobody knew for sure what was going on. And so the most important thing then was to talk to the farmers, to think about what management strategies would be effective and readily adopted on urban farms, because whatever people were doing now wasn't working yet. And important qualifications here being to be appropriate for the farmers, not just the farmers who'd be participating in a grant, but the farmers who would be the target audience, is that urban farmers want minimal use of pesticides. When they do, it's going to be OMRI approved materials, but often as minimal use as they can. And so conventional pesticides are mostly out, and then just as is the case, I think for most partnership grants, keeping in mind that what you're asking, and also a lot of times the practice itself, needs to not be too big of a lift, probably, and not too big of a departure from existing practices. Otherwise, it's just not going to get adopted, most likely. So next slide, please. So this is, okay, so these are my sort of tips from doing a couple of these before. But also this was the process I went through here with talking to the farmers. So is not, even though this, as opposed to a farmer grant, this is one where, of course, as a service provider, I would be the one leading the grant, but if the farmers don't buy into it, then it's not going anywhere. So making sure to talk to the farmers, work through, is this a real issue for them here? Are they excited about the thing that I might want to do, but also what are some of their own ideas? So that, making sure that even though it's not farmer led, they need to be very active participants, or at least excited about it, at least a little bit excited about it. And then also, if they have great ideas, some ideas we all probably go into, if you're on a call like this, you probably have a bunch of different grant ideas swimming in your head. Some of them, we can't go after everything. So some of them might actually be better for the farmer to go after as a Sare farmer grant than we sign on as a service provider or not. So that's the other thing. And there were a couple of, times that people had really cool ideas, and I said, you should apply for a Sare farmer grant when that comes around. And let me know and I'll try and help with that. And then at the end of the day, you have to be excited about the idea too. This isn't a grant where it's going to, it's not going to pay all of your salary, presumably. It's a smaller grant. It's for a defined project. This is my thinking on it, right? And that you should really be excited about it. And this is part of what it's doing is giving you excuse to work on something you really want to work on, So that's, I guess that's it for this slide. So what we did for this grant, and this was again after talking to farmers and after getting feedback from some colleagues who know a lot about spider mites, was to propose a scouting protocol. So there are 4 partner farms in this, and actually added another one afterward, who isn't. That's another thing, is that other people heard about it. They sort of wanted to get interested, so leaving it open-ended so that other people might have a way of participating, even if not formally. And so scouting protocol of putting bean plants at the ends of tomato rows, because it's easier to scout those for spider mites. They're fewer leaves, it's a lot more visible, and it tends to show up earlier on beans than tomatoes. And then working with farmers and farm crew to develop scouting protocols that would be useful for that they're going to be likely to adopt. And so getting farmer input on how can we set up a way to scout for spider mites that's going to fit into your daily routine. So I left that a little bit open-ended in the proposal, figuring that farmers would have thoughts, and we probably would end up with a different method than whatever I thought we would do going into it, which is, I think, a common theme for a lot of grants when you're partnering with farmers. And then the next step being to release biocontrols, so release natural enemies, which we purchased from a supplier who IPM Labs in upstate New York, and also work closely with the person who runs that, Carol Glenister, is the owner of that. And so she was in on the grant and helped to help to design this. And so when we release these biocontrols in response to the scouting, when farmers told me that they saw spider mites, or when I saw it, because I did field visits as well as part of this, scheduled every 3 weeks, I think it was, then we would release it, in response to that. And some of them were preventive. I won't get into all the details there, but basically just having this sort of a schedule. And then we also put in habitat plantings for attracting and maintaining natural enemies that might already be present, but maybe just not in enough numbers to be making much difference. And that, again, was partly in response. I wasn't necessarily sure if that was going to work that well. It wasn't what I was thinking about originally, but farmers were really interested in that. And that was one of the things that came up when I would talk to farmers about this idea before writing anything down. And so I included it because it was something that farmers, were interested in and wanted to do. Next slide, please. So then other thoughts, and again, this is also about my process, was, well, and actually, okay, these are also lessons learned from the earlier partnership grant I got 6 years ago back in Massachusetts, which was to come up with poultry enterprise budgets, and worked with 6 or 7 poultry farmers. And the idea of that one was that the farmers were going to track certain things along the way during the season. It was just for 1 year. And then we would put that together, get all that data together and create like a sort of composite poultry enterprise budget for pasture raised broilers and pasture raised layers. And one of the things I learned from that is it's important to not both be very clear to yourself and to the farmers about what you're actually asking them to do, and be certain that it's realistic before you write it down. It's easy to get ambitious when you're writing a grant proposal of any kind, because it feels like maybe because it feels like it's going to be more competitive that way, or maybe because you just feel ambitious. I think I had a case of both of those things back then. And if you overshoot, then it can be pretty hard to execute on that idea. And then what exactly will the farmers get out of the grant? So how's it going to be worth their while? Again, with the poultry enterprise one, all I really had to offer was, maybe these enterprise budgets will be useful for you, or maybe when we talk about these numbers, it'll be useful for you. And here's a stipend. With the, learning from that, when it was hard to get all that data from farmers, and what I was asking them to do with those poultry budgets was outside of their day-to-day routine. It was extra work beyond what it really should have been. So learning from that, in this case, when we talked with farmers about what they would like to do, I already knew the farmers well enough that I knew a little bit about sort of their routines. And so we were able to talk about, how can we fit this into what you're already doing, or what some of your staff are already doing, so that it's not adding, the additional work is minimal. And then also, how's it going to be worth their while? And that really just comes back to making sure that what we're doing, the solution is something they want to know about. Like, this is a thing that is a real issue on their farm. It's not just a pet project of mine. It's something that causes them stress. That keeps them up at night, maybe even because it causes a lot of losses on their farm. So finding a solution is really something they're genuinely interested in. And then making sure that it's, this again is sort of my own thought on it, but is that I'm not going to apply for something like this unless it's something that I would want to do, even if I don't get the grant. Maybe it would be in a different form if I don't get the grant. It might be a lot smaller, or it might be less involved, but it's something that's important enough that the work I put into writing a grant proposal, if I don't get it, some of that legwork I'm still going to use to, in some way or another, to carry out whatever parts of it I can manage to carry out without the funding. I think it's good for incentive, when you're writing it, but I think it's also tells you that the topic you're choosing is worthwhile. I think I was trying to get through the slides in 10 minutes. I think I just made it. So we can go to the next slide, and I'll, which has my contact info on it, including our Instagram account. Yolanda and I keep up, especially during the growing season, we do a little better job keeping it up. And there's my email address, and feel free to reach out. And I think there's time for Q&A later on. So a lot more that I could have said is hard to get through it all in 10 minutes, but I hope that gives you a little bit of an idea.
Thank you, Sam. That was really terrific. Apologies about the slides. I didn't realize they were on a timer in that section. That was really some fantastic information. And in particular, you really explained well how to work in a partnership with a farm or farmers, and which is obviously the goal of this program. And so that's the sort of thing that reviewers are really looking for, that your project will involve farmers much in the way that you did. So that was really great. Thank you for sharing all that. So we're going to pause here and take a couple of minutes to answer some questions that any of our participants may have for me or for Sam. So Deb, do we have some questions in the chat?
We certainly do. And just a reminder for folks that might have come in late, we are taking questions in the Q&A pod. So you just want to type them in there. And I will read them out loud and we'll just go through them. The first question was an operational question about slides, if the slides for this webinar will be available. And yes, indeed, they will. And I will pop in the chat where to find those right on our website. Okay, so digging into some questions that you had, Candice, this one is for you. Have you funded any biochar pilot projects in the past? And is this an eligible project?
Yes, biochar is an eligible topic for this program, for any of our programs, and you could go to our database at projects.sare.org and search the database, and you can put in a keyword, and you can just put in biochar
here.
For this specific grant program, and then you can see what we have funded for biochar projects.
Great. Candice, you are breaking up just a little bit, just to let you know. So maybe.
All right. Thank you.
We might have to troubleshoot. Okay, this person says they are in conversation with a half a dozen urban farmers and are exploring ways to collectively procure supplies and maybe share tools. Does the partnership grant support that sort of feasibility study, or maybe trialing new forms of collaboration that they might find themselves in?
Trialing new forms of collaboration, definitely. We don't fund projects that will just benefit one particular organization or community. It has to be something that would be a model that would be used, that could be applicable to other communities in the region. So you want to just be careful about asking for money to just provide equipment or supplies for a specific community or organization.
Sam, did you say you paid your farmers a stipend to participate?
I don't remember if I said, but yes, we did pay our farmers a stipend to participate. In both grants, we did. I don't remember the exact number off the top of my head, but yes.
Let's see. This person is a grant writer working with a nonprofit animal sanctuary with land they'd like to experiment on growing crops using permaculture techniques. If they are not a for-profit farm now and this is their first growing season, are they eligible to apply?
If they can demonstrate that they will be selling their product up to $1,000 or $1,000 or more worth this year, they would be eligible as the partner farm, not as the applicant. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. This question about compensating farmers. So they say it seems straightforward to calculate compensation for salaried employees, but what compensation is typical for participating farmers?
Yeah, we don't have anything any structured guidance for that. You would need to talk with the farmer and determine what they feel would be a valuable compensation for them, whether it could be a daily rate, a rental fee for their facilities or their time, an hourly rate, what they feel would be reasonable. And I mean, generally, I think we've seen amounts anywhere from $25 an hour to $75 an hour. So it really goes across the board. And I don't know, Sam, if you have any input on that as how we would determine how much you would pay farmers.
I don't know if I guess I just figure on it being a non-trivial amount. It has to be enough that it actually is going to offset their work. I think we might have very loosely thought about like how many hours they're putting into it, but then it's hard to really pin it down. So again, I can't remember the exact number, but it was enough. It feels like it needs to be enough that it's meaningful. It's the best I can tell you.
Okay, so Candice, you mentioned a federal employee may not be able to be paid for their time on the project. And I understand we cannot use staff time as a match, but could you elaborate on how being a federal employee impacts the project or grant eligibility?
Right, so we are a federally funded program. So other organizations that are federally funded can apply to our projects, but then we need to go and get specific. We need to then provide that proposal to USDA NEPA, who will then authorize us to award that those funds. And generally, they will not allow for people to put in their time, because since it's federal funds, they'll generally not let federal employees put in their time onto another federal grant. But that's something you would need to clarify with your organization. They should be able to let you know if that's the case for sure.
Okay, and I think we have time for one last question, and then we're going to move on, and we'll have other time for questions later. So this question says, is a startup marketing distribution collective eligible? This one is specifically for cut flowers.
It's eligible for sure, because I imagine you'd be working with established farms for that. And again, just like the equipment sharing program or whatever, you want to make sure that it could be a model for like that you're investigating how it could work best as a model for other areas in the region, so that it's applicable only to your situation.
Okay, great. Let's move on, and then we can come back to some other questions.
Yeah, and I just want to say also, if you have a specific question, maybe I didn't answer it quite enough for you, or you still have questions about it. So now we're going to move on to what makes a good proposal.
Before we move on, Candice, you are breaking up quite a bit.
Oh, my internet. Let's see. I can only keep on going and try. But let me know if it continues. So we're going to now talk about what makes a good proposal. And first, we'll talk about the budget. You're asking for money, so the budget is a key part of your proposal. And it is important to know what you can or cannot ask for. So first, make sure you spend a good amount of time on your budget so that it is specific and complete. It should provide your best estimate of the expenses you expect to encounter. All these expected expenses will need to be itemized in the budget justification and narrative Excel spreadsheet. And you will find a template for that on our website. You'll need the unit, quantity, and price for each expense item. There is a lot more explanation in the call for proposals, including a sample budget, but you want to be sure to calculate your costs as precisely as possible to show reviewers what funds are needed to carry out your project and why they're needed. Expenses are paid, again, on a reimbursement basis, and you can only ask for reimbursement of expenses during the contract period, which starts March 1st, and then the end date is determined based on the timeline. The cap, again, is $30,000, and I'm actually going to talk more about that in just a moment. SARE funding must comply with USDA, NEPA, and the University of Vermont guidelines. Therefore, there are certain allowable expenses and certain not allowable expenses. So first, we'll look at what's allowable. Personnel time, that's time spent on project tasks, maybe your time or that of one of your employees. Someone asked if there's a cap on the amount of time allowed for personnel, and the answer is no, but the amount of time does need to be justified and reasonable for the project. Materials and supplies are allowed. That would be like flagging, collection vials, feed, fertilizer, that sort of thing. Travel, sometimes you have to travel, maybe as part of the study or for outreach to present your results at a conference. Printing and publications, you may want to print a flyer for a field day or a fact sheet with your study results. And then there are other direct costs, which include, for example, equipment rental, soil tests, consultant fees, and more. Now, we talked about the time or a stipend for a farmer you're working with, and that would go under consultant. They would be listed as a consultant in your budget. So everything you request funding for must be directly related to the work you're proposing to do. Some things that Sare does not cover are, we can't pay for you to build a structure like a barn or do a major renovation. We can't cover the purchase of equipment that you or your farmer would normally use in your operations. Sare prefers that you rent any equipment you might need, but sometimes purchasing is the only option. So if that's the case, and it's specialized equipment required for the project, it could potentially be covered fully or on a prorated basis if it has a useful life beyond the project. So if you have any questions about equipment, you can call me and ask. Cell phones and cell charges are not allowed. Food is not allowed unless it's necessary for the continuity of the meeting, as in there's no other option for participants to get sustenance. And we can't pay for any swag or incentives, and we won't cover labor or operating expenses for what you or the farmer normally do. It has to go beyond normal operations and be specific to the project. As I've said, the maximum amount you can request is $30,000, but you don't need to ask for that full amount, and you want to be sure that the amount requested is appropriate to your project. So proposals with higher funding requests, closer to that 30,000 mark, should clearly justify the need for a more robust budget. So this could include multi-year projects for longer or more thorough documentation of results or changes. For instance, in field studies, more money could allow for more replications. We also encourage social science projects, and in those you often have trainings or some sort of education, and then you need time to do follow-up surveys to see if the farmers changed their behavior. A more robust budget could also include multi-institution or multidisciplinary collaboration. We encourage more collaboration, and it may cost more to include more people in your project. There could be more complex subject matter, maybe something that looks at multiple systems, or perhaps you'll do some extra outreach and dissemination of your results. And while outreach is a requirement of the project regardless, more money may allow you to reach even more farmers in a meaningful way. All that being said, we also do encourage simpler one-year projects for less money. And this, we hope, would be helpful to applicants who are new to writing grants. It's a competitive process, and we want to be sure that folks know that smaller projects have just as good of a chance to be funded. So in the call for proposals, there are step-by-step instructions for completing the proposal online. For the main proposal questions, we highly recommend that you prepare your answers offline before entering them into the online system. To that end, on page 5 of the call for proposals, there's a link to a Word doc format of these questions, and you can use this to prepare your answers. And be sure to pay special attention to the word limits for each question. So first, you'll need to write a proposal summary. This is a standalone summary of the project, and it should briefly describe the issue, the objectives, the key components of your plan of work, and your outreach strategy. Now, since the summary is the first thing reviewers will see, we recommend taking some time to make it clear and compelling. You may want to write this even after you've written the rest of your proposal when you're clear about all the other pieces of your proposal. Next, you'll provide applicant and collaborator information. This is where you describe your team, including you, your partner farmer, and any additional key collaborators. You want to be sure for each person to describe their experience, skills, and capacity for the work, as well as what they will contribute and the work they will perform. Reviewers will want to know that you'll be able to carry out the project. In this section, you'll also need to enter the names and contact information for your farmers and collaborators, along with a brief statement of what their role is in the project. So be sure to have that information on hand. The next section is the problem and proposed solution. What's the issue or the opportunity that you're addressing, and why is it important, and what can you do to make it better? You want to convince reviewers that the issue or opportunity affects other farmers and that there's a demonstrated need for that work. Next, you will discuss previous work. You'll describe what's already been tried and how your project builds on existing efforts. Reviewers will want to see that you're up to date with current information. And you'll need to provide a list of citations that you reference when you discuss the previous work, or as well as anywhere else in your proposal. Then you want to clearly state your project's objectives, be specific in stating the questions you're asking, and then lay out your materials and methods. Reviewers want to know that your methods will get you to the results that are meaningful and will answer your questions, so you can align them directly with your objectives. Be specific and state exactly what you will do, what items you will use, and how you're going to do it. This is also where you can upload any supporting documents, such as diagrams, sample questionnaires, or anything that can help reviewers understand what you're going to do and how. Then you'll describe your outreach plan, explain what you're going to do to tell farmers and others in the agricultural community about your project and results. This could be demonstrations, twilight meetings, a guide, video, webinars. There are many, many options, but just know it does not have to be an in-person event. And lastly, you're going to provide your timeline. You want to lay out each activity from your methods all the way through to your outreach, when, who will do them, and how long it will take. This should align with your methods and also with your budget. So if reviewers see in your budget that you're requesting money for field help, then you should have it identified in the timeline when and who will be doing that work. On the other hand, if in your timeline, you're going to use 20 hours of employee time to collect soil samples, then you know that that's how much you should include in your budget task. There are documents you will need to upload into the system before you submit the proposal. Documents that are required for all proposals are that letter of commitment from the partner farmer, or all the farmers if you're working with more than one, your budget justification and narrative spreadsheet. You will upload the Excel spreadsheet as well as enter the category subtotals directly into the system. And there's a grant commitment form. You will find this form on our website, and it requires signatures from an authorized official from your organization. This is important because we will be contracting with your organization and they have to agree to be financially responsible. Some proposals may require further attachments. If you're including other collaborators on your project, be sure to upload letters of commitment from them as well. And then any other supporting documents to describe certain aspects of your project as we discussed. So don't wait until the last minute to gather these. They need to be uploaded to your proposal before you submit. Edits and attachments cannot be accepted after the 5 p.m. deadline. But when you're providing your basic proposal information, you will be asked if you're working with human subjects or livestock. Working with either of these, you can answer no to each one and move on. But if you are working directly with people or livestock, your project will need a review either from an institutional review board for the human subjects or an institutional animal care and use committee for projects that work directly with vertebrate animals. USDA NEPA requires that projects are done in accordance with protections for these groups. So if you answer yes to either of them, you will need to provide your plan for obtaining that review. This could be from your own institution, or if your organization doesn't have that available, you could collaborate with someone from an institution that could provide this. So think about this ahead of time and put a plan in place if needed. This is described more in the call for proposals, so if you have any questions about whether it applies to you or not, please contact me and we can talk it through. The timeline for the review process is, deadline is April 13th. You can only submit online and the system closes sharply at 5 p.m. The proposals are then sent off to review teams and scored, and results are announced at the end of July. If you get an award, the contract would start on August 1st, and we would work with you to finalize those details for contracting. And just a note on that, it's fine for your project to start later than August 1st. Maybe you need to wait for next year's growing season or such, but the contract would still start August 1st, and then you would start your work whenever is appropriate. If your proposal is not accepted for a grant, we'll send you comments from the reviewers sometime in late August so that you can understand how you can improve your proposal if you would like to resubmit next year or submit to another organization. We realize that you put a lot of effort into submitting a proposal, so we want to be sure you get something out of it too. Next, I will be going over how to enter your proposal online, but let's first pause and answer a few more questions.
And we do have a lot, some questions in the queue, so I'll go ahead and read those. For the budget, Candice, how long does it take to receive reimbursement for submitted expenditures?
So you can submit your invoice whenever you're ready, but you do need to know that we cannot make any payments until the contract is in place. So you'll work with me to get the details finalized for your contract. And then it's important that you send all your paperwork back as soon as you can with everything completed and signatures when needed. And once your contract is fully executed, we can start making payments. And there is a little bit of lag time in processing the payments too, just be aware, especially for the first one, because our financial manager has to set up your account. But typically it should take just a few weeks to get your, once you submit an invoice to get your payment.
Thank you. Do multi-state projects get more points during the review over a single state, or do they have the same weight during the review process?
They have the same weight. That's not a criteria for the proposals.
Can farmer tours or visits be included in the proposal?
Yes, that would be considered part of your outreach, and we would, and I'm assuming you're referring to funding those, so including those in your budget as well, and you can include those in your budget as well.
This person says they have collaborators in Pennsylvania and Ohio, which is outside of our region, for a proposal they'd like to submit. Is it appropriate to apply for Northeast Sare and or North Central Sare? Do I have to limit my Sare proposal to just one state?
You do not need to limit your Sare proposal to one state. It's fine to have collaborators that are not in the region, although you do want to have at least one collaborator or your farmer partner, at least one farmer partner in the region, so that your work is, so it's clear that your work applies to the Northeast region.
Does Northeast Sare have any requirements for particular participation of disadvantaged farmers like black farmers or food desert farmers? And as well, and then part two, part two is any particular focus on young farmers?
So we don't have any special call for those proposals, but we do encourage those proposals, and we do like to see a diversity of proposals come through, and we definitely like to reach those communities and demographics. So we encourage them for sure.
And that's all the questions I see in the queue right now, Candice. We have about 10 minutes left. I just wanted to give you a sense of time.
Thank you. Perfect. Great. Well, so this last section briefly shows you how to submit your proposal online. There are step-by-step instructions in the call for proposals. So I'm going to go through this quickly. And as Deb mentioned, the PowerPoint will be posted on our website, so you can refer back to it later if you would like. So you start with your idea for a project, you arrange your farmer partners, and you meet with them to develop your project proposal. You read the call, and this is important because there are a lot of details in that call that will help you to write the best proposal you can. You prepare your answers offline, and then you'll go to our grants management system to submit your proposal. And you'll find that at this URL, projects.sare.org. And if you've been funded before, this is the same system as where you submit your reports, so you can use your same login. If not, you'll need to create an account where you'll be asked to set up your profile with your contact info, and you'll also be asked for demographic information. And this demographic information is required by USDA NEFA. It's required for us to ask it. It's not tied to your proposal at all. And while these are required fields, you can select prefer not to answer if you want to opt out of these questions. Once you complete your profile, you will see this applicant registration screen, and you'll also receive an email with your login information and how to create a password. When you create a new password, you'll see a screen like this. Also, if you are already in the system, but you don't remember your password, you can follow the prompts for forgot password and you'll get to this same screen. Once you're logged in, you will land on your project's home page and you will see a link to start a new grant proposal. Now the system is used for all of the SARE regions, all 4 of the regions. So you have to make some choices here. So click on the plus sign to the left of Northeast and you'll see the box for 2021 Northeast Partnership Grant. And here you need to click on begin a new proposal. And now you're into the proposal submission. There's a link back to the call for proposals, which is again, very important for you to read before submitting. And you'll enter your title by clicking edit title. You'll also need to enter a proposal description. There's also a button here to change PI. As I said, this is a national system and used for a lot of other regions and programs, but we require that the PI be the one entering the proposal, so you shouldn't need to use this button. Now, if you have some issue with that, please contact me and we'll discuss it and work around it. Then below, you'll see the proposal sections, and you'll read the overview here, and then you click on each of the sections to answer the proposal questions, which you've prepared offline. In order to answer them, you need to click Edit Answer, and then put in your answer, and then be sure to click Save in order for your answer to be saved. If you move on without clicking Save, you'll find that when you go back to it, your answer won't be there. At any time, you can preview a draft of your proposal by clicking View Draft, and you can also use that to share your proposal with someone like your farmer partner if you want them to review it. You can tell that all your answers were saved if you see a green check on the side of that category. If there is a red asterisk, it means that there is an answer missing. Once all the question sections are answered completely, the Submit Proposal button will show up in the bottom left corner. It won't be there until you have all your sections answered completely. If you're ready to submit, it's a 2-step process. You click Submit Proposal, then you'll see this box where it's asking if you're sure you want to submit. You check I understand and then click that Submit Proposal. You will then get a confirmation email from the Sare Grants Management System. So be sure you receive that email. If you don't, go back in and make sure you actually finalized your submission. Once you've submitted, the box at the bottom of the list will change to Unsubmit Proposal. So if you realize you made an error or you want to change something, you can go back into your proposal, you can unsubmit it, make the necessary changes, and then resubmit. It's very important that you resubmit before the deadline, otherwise the proposal will not move forward for review. You will receive a verification email every time you submit and unsubmit, so just make sure that the last email you receive says that the proposal has been submitted. So that's the online system. And I went through it very quickly. Again, it really does walk you through it. There are just a few things that aren't particularly intuitive, so I tried to point those out. And now I'm just going to summarize some of the final tips for submitting your proposal. Make sure that your project is a good match for SARE and that you're eligible. Read the call for proposals so you know what you need to provide. Start early, discuss your project with your farmers well in advance. Prepare your application offline and ask others to review it. Write with reviewers in mind. Reviewers have broad agricultural experience, but may not be deeply familiar with your topic. So avoid unnecessary jargon and make it clear and easy for reviewers to understand what you're going to do and why. Develop your budget. Think through your project and the expenses you will need to make. Don't pull numbers out of a hat, but get real pricing. And remember the attachments. Don't wait until the last minute to get letters or signatures. On our website, you will find the call for proposals, an Excel template for the required budget narrative and justification, and the grant commitment form. And we also have the definition of the farm document posted there. So that's it. At any point along the way, you can feel free to contact me with questions. So I don't know if we've gotten any more questions in. We have a few more minutes, I think. We could answer some more.
We do. Thank you, Candice. So let's see. Does SARE help match research partners with farmers who have project ideas?
No, we do not provide that that service. We recommend if you're a farmer and you want to you have an idea and you want to work with somebody, that you reach out to maybe your local extension office or any of the farm organizations in your local area to see if anybody would be willing to work with you, and somebody who may have the expertise in what you're thinking about, what you want to do, and see if they would like to develop a proposal with you.
And this is also a good time to surface our farmer grant program too, where farmers conduct the research.
Yes, in the fall, we offer a farmer grant program, and that's for farmers to conduct research. And you don't need to partner with anybody, but you do need a technical advisor for that program, somebody to just help you along with any questions you may have about the proposal or the work you want to do, or maybe help you design your project, your experiments. And the deadline for that is typically in mid-November, and the call usually is posted by early September.
Great. If we have a grant that we are currently in, do I need to close that out before being funded for the SARE grant?
No, and I don't know if you're referring to a SARE grant, another SARE grant, or just another grant, but no, we don't require that. The only requirement that is if you have other SARE grants that you're up to date on all your reporting, we require that is the case before we'll award another project to you.
Mm-hmm. Before we move off the farmer grant piece, a question about, will there be a session for the farmer grant info?
Yes, we do a webinar for farmer grant program as well, and that typically is held in early October.
Great. Is there a published policy on indirect costs on these grants?
Yes, in the call for proposals, there's detailed information about indirect and what's offered for organizations. Indirect is offered at 10% of the total award. So you can include that in your budget if you have a federally negotiated rate for indirect, and your organization would know if you do have that. If you don't, you can apply for a de minimis rate, and that is 10% of the total direct cost. So it's slightly less than 10% of the total award. So that is explained more in the call for proposals. So you should be able to find out all the information there. It's also explained on the budget template, the Excel template that we have posted online. And again, contact me if you have any questions about it.
Great. And just a reminder, for a multiple year grant, is the maximum 30,000 total or 30,000 per year?
30,000 total.
Great. And let's see, what are the most critical areas of research SARE has today versus 5 years from now?
That is a great question. And I really, critical topics, it's hard for me to say. I gave examples of all the topics that we have been funding over the last couple of years. You know, I think we're looking for innovative projects, and I think it's driven mostly by the applicants and what people are submitting. And that's what we're looking for, projects that are innovative, that are needed by the farmers. So if you have an idea and you present your case that this is what farmers are really looking for, that's what reviewers are going to look for in their scoring of proposals. I don't know if Deb is our
Yeah,
communications.
no, I think that you're absolutely right. I mean, we, for lack of better phrasing, we move at the speed of farmers. So we're really looking to fund projects that are of interest and of need for farmers at that time. So we'll look ahead at 5 years and see what what areas of support are needed by our farmers. And we are at time. Unfortunately, this moved really fast. I will put in the chat where to find more information about the Farmer Grant program. Hopefully that's a hot link for you. Any last words, Candice, before we have to say goodbye?
Well, I just want to say thanks for all the great questions. And again, if I didn't get to answer your question, feel free to contact me directly. And I want to thank Sam very much for joining us and providing such great input on your experience and tips for people who want to apply. And thanks to all of you for participating. And other than that, enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks again. Bye-bye.